Like, subscribe and share Tree Fanfiction audiobook channel for all parts. Chapter 112. Kaika Suijutsu's face turned pale, and he said as he stepped back. Kaden Kaikotsu, I leave it to you. He didn't want to fight with Yayun anymore. He was just a lowly human being like an ant, but his strength was not weaker than Kurako Shunsui. If I get entangled by him, I might really be in danger. Seeing this scene, Izansuke, who was sitting on the throne in the Kaya Palace, had a rare look of ugliness on his face. He looked at the water mirror and said coldly, "This piece of trash." He clearly imitated his own Ryutsu, his own abilities, and even his own appearance. But he was actually frightened by a human being. It's a disgrace to him. Beside him, Ichimaru-jin smiled silently. He had followed Izansuke for hundreds of years and knew Izansuke's character very well. In the heart of this proud guy, he only recognized Urahara Kisuke, and the others were just trash in his mind. Shinigami is like this, and it helps to put this in his mind. Human beings are the lowest level of existence. Being frightened by a human being, even if it was just the soul-slaying sword, would fill him with rage. Shame on you, Izansuke. Ichimaru Jinx and Chunin couldn't help but sneer. Clang! The golden stick swung down again. Hwat-yen, who looked like a queen, was knocked away and hit the ground with a loud bang, creating a big hole in the ground. Blood kept coming out of her mouth. Seeing this, Kuang-gu angrily slashed at Yayun's neck with a knife. As Yayun retreated, he pointed his right index finger at Kuang-gu's chest and said with a smile, "Kuang-gu, you're so angry. You lay." A blinding flash of white light. Even though Kuang-gu dodged 047 at the last moment, the dazzling white light still pierced his shoulder, and his figure crashed to the ground with a loud bang. And at this time, only 10 minutes had passed. Hwat-yen and Kuang-gu's bodies were covered with scars, and even standing up was extremely difficult for them. Coupled with the excellent looks of both of them. Instead, she looked weak and pitiful. Hwat-yen Jiao said cautiously, "Yayun, you're using too much force, you little brat. What if you really kill both of us?" Yayun would not be fooled by her false appearance. He smiled and said while carrying the golden staff, "You two are just too weak. I was shocked when you were Bankai, but I didn't expect you to be this good." When the two of them were doing Bankai just now, the Ryutsu released really scared him. It is like the dead silence in the abyss of despair, which allows people to feel the despair deep in the soul and the fear and terror from the heart. He thought this was comparable to old man Yamamoto. Who would have thought that he would be so weak in real combat? After fighting for 10 minutes, he almost crippled the two women. Kuang-gu was almost pd off when he heard this. With anger flashing in his eyes, he endured the pain in his body and turned to look at Hwat-yen and said, "Hwatian, is it almost time?" Hwat-yen was also so angry that his teeth itched. He felt the injuries on his body and gritted his teeth and said, "Almost there." "Almost what?" Yayun raised his eyebrows, feeling a bad premonition. At this moment, Kurako Shunsui came running over from the direction of the 9th Division, grunting and shouting anxiously as he passed a group of people. "Yayun, run, run, don't look back, the power of Kaden Kaikotsu is about to be activated." Before Yayun finished speaking, his pupils suddenly dilated, and he felt a heart-wrenching drama flooding into his mind. Amidst everyone's shocked gazes, Yayun suddenly suffered a large number of injuries. The arm is twisted unnaturally. Purple streaks appeared on the skin. There was a penetrating wound in the shoulder. The blood almost instantly stained the sportswear red. It seemed as if in a moment, Yayun was beaten by 1,000 people, and the injuries on his body were so severe that it made people's scalps numb. At the same time, the injuries on Hwat-yen and Kuang-gu disappeared out of thin air. The two women stood up and looked at Yayun proudly. The first paragraph, hesitant trauma sharing. Hwat-yen, carrying his long sword, said triumphantly, you little BD, now you know what will happen if you underestimate us, right? Kuang-gu held the Kuang-gu short sword and said calmly, this is the injury you inflicted on us. It must feel bad to see it rebound, right? Yayun. Rukia Kukaki shouted anxiously. Next to her, Sodi no Shirayuki ignored Suzumibaki and rushed towards Yayun. Shihao and Yoryuki rushed away at top speed. Kurosaki Ichigo also swung his sword in anger, and Ryutsu rose violently all over his body. But their speed was far inferior to Kaika Suijutsu, who had just arrived at the scene. He took a step and rushed in front of Yayun in an instant. The silver-white long knife stabbed Yayun's eyes fiercely. Human, your time of death has come. Kurako Shunsui closed his eyes in despair, feeling an overwhelming regret. If only I had known this would happen. He should have revealed the Soul Zanto's Bankai ability. Kashimura Seijin and Sui Feng yelled in frustration. They finally got support from the real world. As a result, he died because he didn't know the power of Kurako Shunsui. How could they accept this? At this moment of farewell between life and death, Yayun suddenly opened his eyes and said through gritted teeth. Huatian! Kuang-gu! You too little bee! It hurts so much. Even if you kneel down and beg me, I won't forgive you. As he spoke, black and red Ryutsu rose from Yayun's body, and he bit the stabbing Kaika Suijutsu. Clang! The crisp sound of metal and iron was heard. Kaika Suijutsu gasped in shock. In his opinion, the injuries on Yayun's body were so severe that they were enough to kill a human 10 times, so how could he still unleash such a Ryutsu? Is this human being immortal? But Kaika Suijutsu soon found out the answer. Just see! Yayun in hollow state. It was as if he had become Minos Grande, the evil of this world. His body was filled with powerful black and red Ryutsu. The injuries all over his body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just 1 second. The injury has disappeared. Kaika Suijutsu. Ved. One of the abilities that can only be awakened by the Ajicha's level Minos Grande. It is hailed as a miracle that can restore one's health as long as one survives. Even in the current Sui Palace, there are only a few upper Minos Grande who possess this ability. And in front of him, a mere Shinigami transformed from a human, after possessing the hollow ability, was able to awaken the ability of super-fast self-healing. Huatian and Kuang-gu were both very frightened. You recovered so quickly. That was a fatal wound. Feeling Yayun's lingering gaze, Huatian and Kuang-gu shuddered all over. They feel. I'm going to be in big trouble this time. But Yayun quickly withdrew his gaze, biting Kaika Suijutsu in his mouth, holding Kaika Suijutsu's arms with both hands, and gritted his teeth and said. Let's get rid of you first. In his mouth, black and red Ryutsu continued to condense, forming an extremely terrifying pressure that seemed to be able to destroy the world. Kaika Suijutsu's face turned pale with fear. If he was hit by Yayun's Zero at close range, he would be seriously injured even if he was not blown to pieces. Let me go, you damned human! Kaika Suijutsu desperately tried to pull his hand back. But Yayun's hands were like iron clamps, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get it out. Next second, a dazzling black and red light exploded. There was only a loud bang and a terrifying explosion. The raging black and red laser exploded, and the black and red light expanded wildly, covering Yayun and Kaika Suijutsu at the same time. From a distance, it was as if a black and red mushroom cloud appeared in the sky. When the mushroom cloud of the explosion dissipated and everyone saw what was inside, they all gasped in shock. Both Yayun and Kaika Suijutsu were seriously injured by Zero's attack. Yayun's cheeks were covered in blood. Kaika Suijutsu wasn't in a much better condition. His entire body was charred black, and the blade in his hand even had 2 or 3 cracks on it. But the next second, Yayun's body returned to normal, and he looked at Kaika Suijutsu with pride. How many more rounds can you take? The soul-slaying sword is not the higher level Minos Grande and does not have the ability to heal itself at super speed. Once it is broken, it will take a long time to recover. And he has super fast self-healing. Even if you take dozens of bullets, you can still recover. Fear flashed in Kaika Suijitsu's eyes, and he quickly shouted, Yayun, calm down. There's no need for us to fight to the death. With our level, if we join forces, we can definitely kill the captain and Aizen-suk. Then the entire Soul Society will be ours. Waste. In the Sui Palace, Aizen-suk almost squeezed out these two words from between his teeth, looking at the water mirror in front of him with cold eyes. Although he had thought that his soul-slaying sword would be ineffective. But I never expected it to be so embarrassing. Not only did he lose face with his soul-slaying sword, he also lost the life of Aizen-suk. The more I think about it, the angrier I get. He even felt a little regretful for allowing the soul-severing knife to materialize. This is truly embarrassing. Yura Harakisuk would probably die of laughter at him. He was such a proud Shinigami, but the soul Zanpakuto he materialized was so disgusting. Aizen-suk gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with ultimate anger. He pointed his right index finger at the water mirror and said coldly, White thunder! Call out! A dazzling white flash of lightning appeared. With a loud bang, the water mirror and the ground of Sui Palace were blown to pieces, and an 8-meter-wide pit was blasted out on the spot. The deafening roar spread throughout Sui Palace. After doing all this, Aizen-suk left the throne without looking back. He wanted to create the real Hagyaku as soon as possible. Breaking the complete boundary between Shinigami and Hollow. Only in this way can he get rid of the soul-slaying sword that makes him feel unbearable. A large number of Upper Minos Grande came hurriedly. Among them, there was a girl with light blue hair, sky blue eyes, wearing a white robe with the zipper open, and walking with a slight forward lean. Grimjo, like a blue cheetah, swaggered into the hall. He glanced at the dusty hall, fixed his gaze on Ichimaru Jin, and said bluntly, Shinigami, what was all that noise just now? Where is Aizen? Ichimaru Jin was still immersed in the scene just now, and said with a smile. Grimjo, you should call him Master Aizen. Grimjo snorted coldly, don't talk nonsense. There's such a commotion over here, is a Shinigami coming over here? Ichimaru Jin didn't care about his rudeness and said with a smile, no, it's just that Captain Aizen lost his composure because of someone. Hearing this, Grimjo was a little surprised. Who? Ever since he met Aizen-suk, he had never seen this Shinigami lose his composure, as if everything was under control. Ichimaru Jin thought of Yayun and said with a smile. Yayun, his name is Yayun, he's a very interesting human being. This is also the first time I've seen someone who can make Aizen react so strongly. Yayun! What an amazing guy! Ichimaru Jin thought secretly in his heart. Boom! Another close-range explosion from Zero. After the explosion, Yayun's injuries continued to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. But Kaika Suijitsu's condition was even worse, with more cracks all over the blade, as if it would completely break if hit a few more times. This frightened him to the ultimate level. He is Aizen-suk's Zanhunt and possesses Aizen-suk's Ryutsu. He was supposed to unite with the demon sword Muramasa to create immortal soul-severing swords, and lead these soul-severing swords to dominate the entire Soul Society. He then led a large army to invade Hueco Mundo. Defeat his own master, Aizen-suk. Ascend the long vacant heavenly throne in the Soul King Palace. But now, I am about to be broken. The embodied body will also die as a result. He couldn't even get back to Aizen-suk. Thinking of this, Kaika Suijitsu almost went crazy. He frantically pulled his body out and roared loudly at the top of his lungs. Kaiten Kaikotsu, Zgayo no Kotori, Senbonzakura, please come and save me quickly, don't let me die in this guy's hands. Suzumushi, and you, come here quickly too. Your master is my master's subordinate, you can't just stand by and watch me die. Muramasa, come and save me quickly. Boom! Another black and red Zero exploded. There were more cracks on the Essence Water Moon sword, and his face was pale when he materialized it. Yayun also shook his head. After being hit by several Zero bullets at close range, even he felt a little overwhelmed. Looking at Kaika Suijutsu, which still needed several Zero to break, Yayun couldn't help but feel really tough, as expected of Ryutsu who inherited Aizensuke's skills. If you were at Aizensuke's level, it would be really troublesome. There is still a gap between Soul Zandayo and Shinigami. For example, in Kyoka Water 3.0, he wouldn't use Aizensuke's rope-sized kid. While speaking, Zero condensed in Yayun's mouth again. Boom! 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 Following several consecutive Zero explosions, Kaika Suijutsu was no longer able to speak. The Kaika Suijutsu he condensed was damaged, and his materialized entity was also seriously injured. Just when Yayun was about to fire another shot, his expression suddenly changed, and he quickly retreated, unable to help but curse. Urahara Kisuke, it's fine if you can't help, but why are you causing trouble at this time? Boom! A flash of fire exploded around him. Then came a barrage of fireballs. The one who launched the attack was an elegant-looking woman not far away, wearing a white robe, who looked a bit like Anohanaretsu. You might not be able to tell who this is just by looking at his appearance. But Ryutsu is obvious. Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly and said helplessly while retreating. I had no choice. The time was too short to take any good protective measures. My soul-severing sword still betrayed me. When speaking, he glanced at the elegant woman with a headache. Hongji, you are my soul-severing sword, so you should be able to distinguish between friend and foe, right? The elegant woman looked at him coldly, then swung her knife at him fiercely, and hundreds of fireballs lit up the sky. Urahara Kisuke, I have not forgotten any of the transformations you have performed on me. Yayun blinked when he heard that, looked at Urahara Kisuke and cursed. Beast! What have you done with this beautiful soul-slaying sword? Chapter 113. Urahara Kisuke felt like vomiting blood. He is a scientist, and one of the top scientists. Of course he can research and create all kinds of things. And what could be more valuable for research than the soul-slaying sword? Based on this, he made some changes to his Hongji, such as creating multiple shikai, changing the soul-slashing knife type, etc. Everything was normal. After all, he is not the only one who does this. Kuratsuka Mayuri was even crazier than him. Not only did he change the shikai of the Soul Zanto, but even the Bankai posture was changed into a mess. But there's no way. Who asked the soul-slaying knife to betray him? So Urahara Kisuke could only humbly apologize to Hongji, but in response, Hongji gave him hundreds of hot fireballs. Go to hell, you scumbag! Hongji looked at Urahara Kisuke coldly, unwilling to forgive her master at all. Urahara Kisuke was screaming and groaning from the explosion, as if he had just crawled out of a pile of coal. Urahara Kisuke, is it fun to modify the Soul Zanto? Hongji spoke again, her eyes becoming even colder. She slowly pointed the soul-slaying sword at him, and wisps of red spiritual power spread out. Why don't you let me transform your body? Urahara Kisuke felt his scalp tingling. He didn't want to be transformed into a monster. You deserve it. Yayun couldn't help but laugh. Although Zanhunto was bewitched by Muramasa, he was full of hatred towards Shinigami. But hatred also has different levels. And Hongji's hatred for Urahara Kisuke has undoubtedly reached its peak. She might even be able to transform this guy into a puppy. Thinking about, Yayun was ready to continue ravaging Kaika Suijutsu. But at this moment, his brows furrowed deeply, and with a stick in his hand, he smashed the moon ball coming from the front into pieces. Yes. Next to Kurosaki Ichigo, a middle-aged man in a black robe suddenly appeared, holding the Zangetsu in his hand. Kurosaki Ichigo was also startled and looked at the black-robed uncle in shock. "Uncle Zangetsu, have you also been bewitched?" Uncle Zangetsu waved Zangetsu and said calmly, "Ichigo, is Zangetsu's power so weak? Do I need you to rely on the power of the Hollow Point 19? Kurosaki Ichigo immediately thought of the battle he had just had against the Baboon King Zabimaru. He indeed does not have the ability to use Zangetsu. Instead, he used the Hollow ability. So he said awkwardly, "Uncle Zangetsu, this is a misunderstanding. I am worried about cutting off that guy completely, so the team." "No, Ichigo." Uncle Zangetsu swung his blade, pointed it at Kurosaki Ichigo, and said calmly, "The reason you rely on the power of the Hollow is because you haven't truly mastered Zangetsu. Now, I'll let you experience what a true crescent moon is." As he spoke, Uncle Zangetsu held Zangetsu and rushed towards Kurosaki Ichigo at an extremely fast speed. Clang! The two Zangetsu suddenly collided with each other. Sparks flew. The sound is harsh. Uncle Zangetsu's appearance is really a bit chilling. Yayun silently withdrew his gaze. He was not worried about Kurosaki Ichigo because Zangetsu could not hurt Kurosaki Ichigo, instead it would make him stronger than he is now. Just then, a cold light flashed in Yayun's eyes, and he said, "What are you doing in my mental space? Get out!" As he spoke, he grasped the Ruyi Jinggubang in his hand and smashed it hard on the ground, and the suppressive power of the Dingai Shenzhen burst out instantly. Next second, the figure of the demon sword Muramasa emerged from the void, looking at him in disbelief as if he had been hit by a stick. "How did you do that?" He clearly saw the golden pillars standing tall in Yayun's soul-slaying sword's world of mind, emitting the power to seal off the heavens and the earth. But before he could start to seduce others, he was repelled by the golden pillar of the Yunmin man. You know, because of the soul-severing sword's ability, he will hardly be repelled by the soul-severing sword. Even if it's rejection, the soul-slaying sword itself cannot defeat him. But the golden stick repelled him in an instant and almost suppressed him in the world of mind. "Idiot, are you trying to seduce the Dingai Shenzhen?" A sneer appeared on Yayun's lips. His soul-slaying sword only has two abilities, one is to become heavier and bigger, the second is to suppress. That is known as the ability to stabilize the sea. Even a vast ocean can be suppressed. Not to mention that you have a soul-slaying sword that doesn't even have an owner. If I kill you, I'll probably be able to undo all the soul-slaying blade's enchantment, right? Yayun looked at the demon sword Muramasa with a bad look, took a step forward, raised the golden staff, and smashed it down fiercely. The demon sword Muramasa's face turned pale, and he let his body collapse again without hesitation. But he was still a little slow this time. The left arm was almost smashed. He fled into the world of mind in a very embarrassed manner. When they saw the demon sword Muramasa was injured, the expressions of all the soul-slaying swords changed and they looked at Yayun with uncontrollable anger. "Huatian, Yayun, I will never forgive you, UBD. Kuanggu, Muramasa is the one who saved our existence. He is the hero of our soul-slashing blade. Zgayo no Kotori, Aya Aya. Senbonzakura, I will cut you into pieces. Hongji, since you've already started, I'll kill you, UBD, before I transform Urahara Kisuk." Yayun blinked and decided to deal with the current situation first, so he turned to look at Hongji and said affectionately, "Ms. Hongji, I sincerely suggest that you get rid of Urahara Kisuk first. This guy is too cunning. What will happen if he runs away?" Urahara Kisuk, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, turned purple in the face. After hesitating for a few seconds, Hongji actually followed Yayun's advice and pointed the blade at Urahara Kisuk again. "Urahara Kisuk, you're dead today." The corners of Urahara Kisuk's mouth twitched wildly, and he finally looked at Yayun with a dark face. "Mr. Yayun, thank you. No, it's just heavy. Yayun waved her hand nonchalantly, no longer looking at Urahara Kisuk's murderous expression, and instead looked at Kurako Shunsui. Captain Kurako, Sui Feng, Renji, if I accidentally broke your soul-slaying swords, you wouldn't blame me, right? Abarai Renji's mouth twitched. Yayun, you've almost broken my soul-slaying sword. His baboon king Zabimaru, ever since he was hit by Yayun's stick, has been lying on the confession palace just like the paralyzed lion majesty. Just a little bit more and my whole body would be shattered. Kurako Shunsui coughed twice and said a little embarrassedly, Mr. Yayun, if possible, please show some mercy. He really didn't want to be a captain without Bankai. That would be a bit too embarrassing. Show mercy. A few well-shaped characters appeared on Yayun's forehead. He flashed and appeared in front of Kurako Shunsui, grabbed his clothes and said. Then why don't you take care of your soul-severing sword? Ah! Kurako Shunsui screamed in agony and anger. His figure was thrown directly to Kaiten Kaikotsu by Yayun like a bowling ball. Huatian and Kuanggu's eyes suddenly lit up, and they rushed forward without hesitation, slashing at Kurako Shunsui's lower body with a wolf-like move. Kurako Shunsui turned pale with fear. Although he has lived for hundreds of years, he has never wanted to be a eunuch. Bakud number 61, 6 Staff Light Prison. Bakud number 63, Lock and Bind. 2 instantaneous Bakud shots without chanting were fired, barely blocking Kaiten Kaikotsu's attack. Yayun looked at Sui Feng again. The latter quickly covered his chest and looked at him warily. Stinky Yayun, don't even think about throwing me out. I can't beat Suzumibaki now. Her leg was injured. He will be bullied to death by Kwa Feng. Yayun could only give up and looked fiercely at the dying Kaika Suijutsu. Next, I'll kill you first, and then kill that BD Muramasa. Kaika Suijutsu was almost frightened to the point of peeing his pants, and once again cried out for help, repeatedly calling out the names of several soul-slaying swords, such as the demon sword Muramasa and Sugyo no Kotori. Suddenly, another powerful burst of Ryutsu. A violent sword energy once again blocked Yayun's steps. Yayun knew who it was without even looking. He sighed and said, What a hassle! Sister Hawa, your cold-hearted person is here. Sure enough, next to Anohanaretsu, there was a woman wearing a black hood, whose figure could not be seen clearly. Kaika Suijutsu's eyes suddenly lit up. Minajiki, come and save me. Muramasa, please get Minajiki to save me. If it is the soul-slaying sword of an unprecedented villain, it will definitely not be weaker than the Kaiten Kaikotsu. Enough to fight Yayun on equal terms. But to his despair, Minajiki, who was wearing a black hood, didn't even look at him, but raised his sword to meet Anohanaretsu. Master, let us two fight. One man, one knife, looked at each other. They both saw the heat and excitement in each other's eyes. They are the 8,000 styles and the 8,000 swords, and only they know the 8,000 ways of swordsmanship. The closest companion. He is also the one they most want to kill. The two men raised their swords and slashed at each other, fighting hundreds of times in a second. The swords flashed and the shadows flashed, and the silver-white light leaped. In just a dozen seconds, one man and one sword switched between hundreds of completely different sword styles. Every knife was so terribly sharp. But the two of them fought on equal terms, and neither of them could defeat the other. Yayun touched his chin and said, they're both equally matched. Minajiki is not inferior to Sister Hawa in terms of kendo proficiency alone. Normally, the materialized Zanhunto cannot inherit the Shinigami's swordsmanship. But Minajiki was clearly not among them. He could only think that this was the result of the unprecedented and unparalleled evil Yachiryu type pervert. At the same time, in the minds of several soul-severing swords, the low voice of the demon sword Muramasa came at the same time. You guys, go save Kaika Suijutsu. The moment the words fell, confusion appeared in the eyes of several soul-severing swordsmen. They subconsciously tightened their grip on the soul-severing swords and spoke. To the bank. A terrifying riot sound burst out from Benihim's body, and she looked at Urahara Kisuk and said coldly. Kananbiriki Benihim Aratam. In an instant, the correct answer was activated. Beniji materializes into a gigantic size. Long hair in a classic bun. Wearing a sleeveless kimono. A woman with puppet-like limb joints. When she entered this posture, Hongji slashed with her sword with incredible power, cutting the earth in half, and then a horrifying scene appeared. Strands of black silk threads spread out. It actually sewed up the ground, and the other half floated towards Urahara Kisuk, as if to crossbreed him with the ground. Urahara Kisuk, don't run. I'm going to transform you into the ultimate creature you've always dreamed of. Hongji chased after him with a cold look in her eyes. The other side. When Kurosaki Ichigo entered the hollow state and suppressed Uncle Zangetsu. Uncle Zangetsu swung Zangetsu fiercely and shouted. To the bank. Tensa Zangetsu. Kurosaki Ichigo gasped. On the battlefield where Roiun and Anohanaretsu were fighting. Although Minazuki's resistance to hypnosis's enchantment was very high due to the frenzy of fighting, he still subconsciously spoke. To the bank. All gone. A blood-red space descended. Kurako Shunsui and Sui Feng, who came to support, immediately felt that something was wrong. Really? Sui Feng saw his Suzumibaki, and his figure expanded rapidly until it turned into a beautiful girl like a queen bee, and then it barely stopped. On its left arm, there is a golden missile. To the bank. Jakarake Ben. Sui Feng's face instantly turned red, and he looked around hurriedly, fearing that someone would laugh at his Bankai posture. Fortunately, everyone else knew what to do and kept their mouths shut. Only Yayun laughed out loud and said, Sui Feng, I have wanted to say this for a long time, you are the boss of an assassination organization, Bankai is actually a missile, ha 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 ha. What a heavy firepower assassination. Ah! Ah, Yayun! Sui Feng's face turned red, and he rushed to Yayun in shame and anger and bit her hard. It was because she couldn't stand her own Bankai's posture that she never used Bankai. I didn't expect that someone would see it. Yayun looked at Sui Feng hanging on his body with a painful look. At this moment, his expression suddenly changed and he looked at Sodi no Shirayuki who was in some pain. 183. I saw a beautiful woman as beautiful as ice and snow, with pain and struggle revealed in her eyes. Aids. She felt her will was being twisted. Although he was full of love for Yayun, it gradually turned into hatred and resentment. Yayun rushed over without hesitation. Halfway, Hongji and Kaiten Kaikotsu, who were behind Bankai, swung their swords at the same time. Drew. Swish. The former's sword caused the earth to crack and then mend itself again, slashing fiercely along Yayun, as if to reconstruct Yayun. The latter's knife strike was silent, but it caused many black spots to appear on Yayun's skin, and he began to cough violently. Urahara Kisuk quickly said, Yayun, you must not be cut by the blade, otherwise you will reconstruct and die. Kurako Shunsui, brother Yayun, please get away from Kaiten Kaikotsu quickly, or you will get sicker and sicker until you bleed to death. Yayun wanted to curse, and said. You two bastards, you didn't help at all, but you made things worse. While speaking, he slammed the golden staff hard. It suppressed the ground as it was constantly cutting off the sutures. He suppressed his injuries again. Then, with anger flashing in his eyes, Lang Lang smashed his stick into the ground next to Sodi no Shirayuki. Beast, get out of here! Chapter 114. Boom! A big hole was smashed into the ground. 10 times the pressure is exerted on the surroundings. Fortunately, there were captains and captain-level soul-slaying swordsmen around, so they were not crushed by the heavy pressure. However, its suppressive power can hit all figures hidden in nothingness, such as the demon sword Muramasa in the world of mind. The demon sword Muramasa, who was in the vast ice and snow, looked extremely ugly. He never imagined that he could be affected by the soul-slaying sword of that human being even though he was in the mind world of another person. Fortunately, he was able to accept the pressure. And in front of him was Sodi no Shirayuki, who was pointing a knife at him with a gaze as cold as ice. Sodi no Shirayuki, have you forgotten how you were forced into submission and used at will by the Shinigami? The demon sword Muramasa still doesn't want to give up Sodi no Shirayuki. The embodiment of the soul-slashing sword before him was extremely powerful, and if he fought with all his might, it could even be stronger than the Kaiten Kaikotsu. It would be great to use as a disposable prop. Sodi no Shirayuki's eyes showed a struggle, and he gritted his teeth and said, I haven't forgotten, but I encountered something more interesting than revenge. The demon sword Muramasa frowned deeply. The Sodi no Shirayuki before him still harbored hatred and resentment towards the Shinigami. But for some reason, he is no longer obsessed with revenge. It's very troublesome to bewitch him. Outside world. Kurako Shunsui fought against Kaiten Kaikotsu with all his might, and said through gritted teeth. Yayun, do you have any ideas? Not only was he fighting desperately, Urahara Kisuke was also trying his best, and one of his arms was almost transformed beyond recognition. A large number of irregular objects are sewn together on it. As for Minajiki and Anohanaretsu, they were nowhere to be seen. Their figures were shrouded in a blood-red barrier. They must have been engaged in a fierce battle. It works, but not very effectively. Yayun's eyes were cold. After all, the demon sword Muramasa is not in his mind world, so it is indeed a bit difficult to defeat him. Thinking about this, Yayun looked at Kaika Suijutsu coldly and suddenly raised his right index and middle fingers. Force that guy out for me. I believe you have a way. How could a soul-severing sword like you trust another soul-severing sword? While speaking, Yayun's index and middle fingers burst out with a dazzling black and red light. Kaika Suijutsu was sweating profusely. He couldn't stand a few more zero attacks, so he gritted his teeth and said, I see. I don't know what he did. In the world of ice and snow, Muramasa, the demon sword that constantly bewitches Sodi no Shirayuki, has a confused look in his eyes, and his five senses are completely dominated. Under the deception of the five armies of sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. He actually took the initiative to walk out of the world of mind. Kurako Shunsui said in surprise, this is, Kokaki Hibiki's soul-slaying sword was hypnosis by Kaika Suijutsu. He really didn't expect that the demon sword Muramasa, which had the ability to bewitch all soul-slaying swords, would actually fail at Jingyu. It is indeed worthy of being Aizensuke's soul-slaying sword. Although unbearable. But the conspiracy and intrigue are still beyond reproach. At the moment when Kurako Shunsui was distracted, Hanaten suddenly jumped up and slashed down fiercely with a knife. Brandy Ghost. The game of the top. The one who stands taller wins. The power of this knife instantly increased tenfold. As the two knives collided, Kurako Shunsui's face changed drastically, and another wound appeared on his shoulder. Now he dared not be distracted anymore. Yayun said nothing, pointing his right index and middle fingers at the demon sword Muramasa and said coldly. Snow White, get out of the way. Wang Su's flash. With Yayun's reminder, Sodi no Shirayuki quickly dodged to the side. But the demon sword Muramasa was unable to dodge and had to watch helplessly as the black and red zero filled his entire sight like a meteor. Kaika Suijutsu. He let out an angry roar. Following a loud bang. The raging black and red zero turned into a shock wave, covering his entire body, like black and red lightning flashing in thunder. Ah! The screams of the demon sword Muramasa resounded throughout the world. The Shinigami and Soul Xanth present saw it all. Sui Feng muttered to himself, Muramasa, who was able to bewitch all of our soul-slaying blades, is actually even less powerful than the Black Robe Heavenly Punishment Muo. In the black and red zero light, Yayun clearly saw the figure of the demon sword Muramasa. His left arm, left shoulder, and left leg were all blown to pieces. It seemed as if it was about to be completely annihilated in Zero. At the critical moment, several bewitched captain-level soul-severing knives transformed into symbols and rushed towards the black and red Zero's ministers without regard for their lives. He saved the demon sword Muramasa by holding Zero's back. Benihime stood in front of Yutmura and slashed the ground with her sword, activating Kananbiriki Benihime Aratam's Bankai ability. The ground was cut off, but it surged like a tsunami, reaching a height of hundreds of meters, and was sewn together by black silk threads. A mountain-like wall was created abruptly. Urahara Kisuke, whose left hand and left leg had been transformed, quickly said, "Yayun, be careful, my Bankai can reconstruct and transform all organic and inorganic matter within the Ryotsu range. There must be a lot of traps hidden inside this wall. Normally, the Soul Zanto's ability is the Shinigami's greatest secret. Just like Kaiten Kaikotsu, Kananbiriki Benihime Aratam, Jakurake Ben, etc., almost no one knows their abilities. But now Urahara Kisuke can't care about these things anymore. The soul-slaying sword that he was originally proud of. Now it has become one of their most difficult enemies. Even the soul-severing sword is a modified type. No wonder Hong holds such a deep grudge against you." Yayun spoke with a dark face, gathering a large amount of black and red spiritual power in his hands again, preparing to forcibly smash the modified wall. Wang Su's flash. Another black and red Zero shot out. Even though the ground walls had been stitched and modified and were extremely strong, they were still shattered by Wang Su's flash. A big hole appeared on the huge wall. It seemed as if it wanted to destroy all the buildings in front of it. Seeing this scene, the nearly dying Yayadao Muramasa roared loudly. "Zgayo no Kotori! Zgayo no Kotori!" who was slacking off with Tessai Tsukabishi, uttered a few helpless yelps and quickly flew right in front of Zero. One of the little blue dolls pointed its right hand at the oncoming Zero. The other little doll pointed its right hand at Yayun. In an instant, the violent black and red Zero was actually absorbed by one of the blue dolls and then released by another blue doll. The scale of the power was even stronger than before. Bakud number 81, Splitting Void. Yayun spoke without hesitation, and a translucent barrier appeared in front of him. There was a loud bang. His Zero crashed into the splitting void. Bakud, which was able to defend against attacks below level 90, was hit so hard that countless cracks appeared on its surface and it was about to break apart. "My Zero is a little too strong." Yayun complained and fired another splitting void, barely blocking Zero. "See this scene? Muramasa Demon Sword. Get out of here first. His own strength is far too weak, far from the level of Kaiten Kaikotsu. If Yayun were to attack him, he, the culprit who had released all the soul-severing swords, might be completely broken. Think of this." He glanced at Kaika Suijutsu with anger. This BD actually used Kaika Suijutsu's ability on him silently. It almost got him killed. Kaika Suijutsu didn't say anything either. He activated the ability of his 5 senses, hypnosis, and while Yayun wasn't paying attention, he desperately fled into the distance. Retracting his gaze, the demon sword Muramasa shouted loudly, "Harinmaru!" A few seconds after the words fell, light snowflakes appeared in the sky. Every snowflake that fell to the ground created a large amount of ice. Falling on people. It's even more important to freeze people inside. Above the sky, Harinmaru with sky blue hair walked over, looking at the people below with indifference, and retreated while protecting the soul-slaying sword. "Yayun, are you going to chase after him?" Rukia Kukaki Yun. Chasing a big-headed ghost. Yayun glanced at Kirako Shunsui and Kambara Kisuke with a dark face. With these few disabled and injured people, who can still fight? He actually wanted to kill the demon sword Muramasa. The problem is that there are too many soul-severing swords on the opposite side, more than the captains on their side. Various abilities are also ridiculously strong. Katan Kaikotsuschio no Kotori. The former's attacks are strange and varied, while the latter can even rebound all non-physical attacks. Kurako Shunsui smiled bitterly. It was really too urgent at the time. No one expected the soul-slaying sword to suddenly betray. Sui Feng limped over and said through gritted teeth. Originally, we wouldn't be in such a bad situation, but with the addition of Kaika Suijutsu, things are different. A few days ago, they were first stabbed by the betrayed Zanhunto, and then stabbed again by Kaika Suijutsu's hypnosis. Almost all the captains were seriously injured. Now, except for that beast Zaraki Kenpeki, their fighting power has been greatly reduced. Urahara Kisuk said helplessly, let's find a place to heal first, and figure out how to deal with those soul-severing swords next. Under Hungji's attack, his right arm was almost stitched with various things. And the left leg. It's like half-stone man. Everyone came to the 9th squad in a mighty procession. A large number of Shinigami gathered here, all looking at them with surprise when they came back. Kurako Shunsui calmed them down and explained, almost all the Shinigami in the entire Seireitei were attacked by those soul-slaying swords in these 3 divisions. Sui Feng said, the situation is very bad. Many Shinigami have been injured in the battle with the Soulzan sword. Yayun nodded. He could see that almost half of the Shinigami present were covered in bandages. Many of them looked half dead. Tessai Tsukabishi, Shihao and Yoryuaki, quickly went over to treat them with Kide, at least to save the dying Shinigami. At this time, Madarame Ikeko in the crowd excitedly waved towards Yayun and said, Yayun, have you seen my soul-slaying sword? Yayun also waved at him and said, I saw it. I didn't even have time to use Bankai. I was almost skinned alive by Sister Hwa. Madarame Ikeko slapped his bald head in despair. The Bankai he had hidden for so many years was finally discovered by others. Fortunately, they didn't know Bankai's abilities. Ayasukawa Yumichika was about to speak when he saw Yayun giving him a thumbs up. Very beautiful soul-slaying sword, glazed peacock, he said, you are ugly, both in appearance and in heart. They are all extremely ugly. Ayasukawa Yumichika. Everyone came to the only remaining captain's office. Urahara Kisuk looked at Inu Orium pitifully and said, Ms. Inu, could you please treat me? Kananbairiki Benihime ability is complete transformation. Once a living being is transformed, its form changes at the genetic level. It was like the stone that had been sewn onto half of his body. It was already considered a part of him and it would be difficult to heal it. Inu Orium quickly agreed. She didn't play any role just now, so of course she wants to use her abilities now. Yayun curled his lips and said, I've been asking you to modify this and research that every day. Now you've experienced what it's like to be a test subject, right? Urahara Kisuk could only smile bitterly. Double sky shield, I refuse. As the pale yellow light curtain appeared, the transformed parts of Urahara Kisuk's body gradually recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Kurako Shunsui and others' eyes suddenly lit up. All lined up, looking eagerly at Inu Orium. Their injuries were all serious. Regular Kide has no effect at all. Sui Feng also wanted to go and queue up, but she looked particularly embarrassed with every step she took. Yayun couldn't bear to watch any longer, so she simply helped Sui Feng over, had her sit on a chair, and took off her shoes. Come, I'll treat you. 2. Sui Feng's face flushed red as he tried hard to pull the little foot off his right leg. She is a lily. I'm still a little uncomfortable with being touched by a man. Yayun pinched Sui Feng's fair calves with both hands, and a green light appeared above his hands. He teased. Don't be so resistant. My hands were used to give Miss Yoryuaki a massage, so it can be considered as indirect contact between you and her. Zhao ma zhao. PT. Sui Feng's face flushed slightly, and he kicked Yayun's thigh. Nonsense kid, that's your hand after all. Having said that. But she stopped struggling. Yayun was treating Sui Feng while curiously saying, "Hit Shuga Ichweir." The expressions of everyone present became a little strange. Jaishur Yukatake coughed twice and pointed helplessly at a room. Captain Hitsugaya was seriously injured and stabbed multiple times. He can't even walk now and can only lie in bed to rest. Rukia Kokaki was surprised, who seriously injured Captain Hitsugaya. Sui Feng uttered a name helplessly. Hinamori Momo. Yayun suddenly felt a toothache. What big thing has this girl, who was played badly by Aizen-suk, done? Kurako Shunsui said helplessly. Kaika Suijutsu disguised herself as Aizen and deceived him, and made her stab Captain Hitsugaya a few times. Yayun didn't even need to hear what happened next to know. Hitsugaya Ichweir, his childhood sweetheart, was certainly not prepared, and was thus happily severely injured. In front of the Minotaur, Yayun shook his head and said, "Where's Byakuya Kokaki? Could this BD have betrayed me? How is it possible, Yayun?" Rukia Kokaki quickly shook her head. How could her brother, who valued honor more than his life, betray her? But the scene was silent. After several seconds, Kurako Shunsui sighed and said in the silence, "Yayun is right. Byakuya Kokaki did betray the Siraidii and joined the soul-slashing blade team." Chapter 115. The 9th Squad's office was extremely quiet. Rukia Kokaki said in disbelief, "Captain Kurako, are you kidding me?" In her eyes, even if all the captains of the Siraidii betrayed her, Byakuya Kokaki would never betray the Siraidii. "I wanted to be joking, but unfortunately I wasn't." Kurako Shunsui scratched his hair, pointed at Sui Feng with his right hand and said, "Captain Sui Feng's leg was injured by him and Senbonzakura together." Rukia Kokaki couldn't help but look at Sui Feng's legs. It was very delicate and white, but there were bloody wounds on it, some deep and some shallow, almost crippling the entire leg. Sui Feng felt a little uncomfortable being looked at, and said, "I don't know what Byakuya Kokaki said to Muramasa, but he suddenly betrayed us." Jaishur Yukatake coughed weakly a few times and said with a wry smile, "After all, Yaedao village is the soul-slaying sword of Kokaki Hibiki. They are related and can be considered members of the same family." Rukia Kokaki was speechless. By now, she certainly knew about the relationship between Kokaki Hibiki and Byakuya Kokaki. Byakuya Kokaki has to call Kokaki Hibiki uncle. From this perspective, it is understandable that Byakuya Kokaki betrayed Shinigami. After all, the two of them are real relatives. Even if the Shinigami is defeated, Byakuya Kokaki's status will not change either. At this time, Yayun pinched Sui Feng's thigh and said with a smile, "Don't think too much. In my opinion, that rigid guy, Byakuya, would never betray me." Rukia Kokaki looked at Yayun expectantly. Yayun lived up to her expectations and said with a smile, "Byakuya Kokaki almost killed you for glory. How could he betray Soul Society for Kokaki Hibiki?" In his opinion, Byakuya Kokaki is definitely a sister complex. Even so, he could still be cruel to his sister. This shows how much he values family honor and rules. Rukia Kokaki's face suddenly darkened, and she gritted her teeth, looking at Yayun unhappily. "Really? Why use me as an example?" But it must be said that after Yayun's guidance, her heavy heart did relax a lot. "I feel that there must be something hidden behind this matter." At this moment, Sui Feng interrupted the conversation with gritted teeth, her face flushed as she looked at Yayun. "How long are you going to keep squeezing my legs?" The legs are one of the most sensitive areas of human beings. After Yayun pinched her thigh for a long time, she felt her whole body getting hot. Sorry. Yayun apologized insincerely and continued to rub Sui Feng's legs comfortably. The matter thus came to an end. Kurako Shunsui looked at Urahara Kisuk and said in a deep voice, "Urahara Kisuk, let's not talk about Byakuya Kokaki. Now that you are here, it is time to launch a counterattack." We can't let the soul-slaying sword occupy the Siriti. Urahara Kisuk nodded slightly. With Yayun's soul-slaying sword, we might be able to directly kill the culprit, the demon sword Muramasa. Don't take me with you. Yayun interrupted Urahara Kisuk lazily. Abarai Renji was stunned for a moment and said, Yayun, aren't you going to take action next? Yayun nodded nonchalantly. Even Sui Feng couldn't help but ask, you're not injured, are you? Why aren't you ready to attack? Why do I have to take action? Yayun gave her a strange look, took off Sui Feng's pink socks, and put his right hand on them to treat her feet. Sui Feng's face turned red like a big apple. He wanted to refuse but was too embarrassed to speak. Rukia Kukaki gritted her teeth and said, but, Captain Kurako and the others are seriously injured now. If you don't take action. Yayun curled his lips and said, what will happen if I don't take action? Will the whole world be destroyed? He glanced at the Shinigami present and said, from what I understand, there should be other secret agencies of the Soul King besides Godi I-13, right? The Shinigami present were slightly stunned. Rukia Kukaki nodded hesitantly. There is such an organization. This is no secret in the Jingling Court. Almost all Shinigami know that there is a special spy agency around the Soul King. It is said that each of them has strong strength. Then why don't they take action? Yayun said calmly, if they had taken action, the situation in Jingling Court wouldn't have been so dire, right? He didn't mind being enemies with the soul-severing swords, but he hated being used as a tool. Rukia Kukaki and others didn't know what to say. They had indeed considered a lot just now, but the only thing they had not taken into account was the Soul King's Secret Service Agency. Kurako Shunsui said helplessly, Yayun, you are not a Shinigami yet, so you don't know. Those people are here to protect the Soul King, Jada, and will hardly participate in any of the affairs of the Jingchong Ting. Then wait until these soul-severing swords reach the Spirit King. I don't believe they won't take action by then. Yayun interrupted Kurako Shunsui. Kurako Shunsui smiled bitterly, not knowing how to persuade Ye Cheng. After all, everything related to the Soul King is taboo. He also didn't dare to tell Yayun the specific situation of the Lingwang Palace. As for Squad Zero, of course I can't tell you. Seeing that Rukia Kukaki was about to persuade him, Yayun simply pointed his right hand deep into the Jingling Court and said coldly. Besides the Spirit King's Secret Service, I remember there was also a group of so-called nobles in the Jingling Court. Why didn't they take action? He hasn't forgotten it yet. The contemptuous gazes he had felt in the Tsunoya Shiro family before. Since everyone is so arrogant, why haven't we seen any nobles step forward now that Jingling Court is in crisis? Instead, he, a humble human, has to fight. Rukia Kukaki was a little embarrassed to speak. Finally, Kurako Shunsui's vice-captain, Ise Nanao, the heir to one of the 5 great nobles, said with shame. I was the only one from my family who came here. The rest of us fled to Rukonga. Where is the Tsunoya Shiro family? Yayun asked. They all ran to Rukonga too. Ise Nanao felt more and more ashamed and wanted to bury her head in the sand. The 4 nobles of Jingling Court have always possessed tremendous power, dominated Jingling Court, and enjoyed all the glory and wealth. Now we are in danger. Except for the Kukaki family. The other 3 families hardly showed up. Certainly. Only Yayun dared to raise this question. After all, there is a clear hierarchy in the Siriti, and no matter how dissatisfied ordinary Shinigami are, no one dares to target the aristocratic group. Shihaoran Yoryuaki, who had just walked in, heard the conversation and felt a little ashamed. He couldn't help but say. Not a single one of that trash was left behind. Yayun said lazily, so, the Secret Service and the 4 nobles haven't shown up yet, so why are they asking me to risk my life? None of the Shinigami present knew how to respond. Sui Feng endured the tingling sensation in his solace and gritted his teeth, saying angrily, Then what are you doing here? Are you here to see the excitement at Jingling Court? Of course not. Ye Yun smiled, gently tickled Sui Feng's solace, and said with a smile. Although I don't like those high-handed guys, I don't want you, Sui Feng, Madarame Ikeku, Ayaskawa Yumi Chika, to get hurt. After all, you are my friends. Sui Feng felt a little shy, his face turned redder, and he kicked Ye Yun in the face. You little brat, you only know how to say nice things, but in the end you are bullying me. She felt like Ye Yun was just playing with her. Although she doesn't hate this feeling either. Ye Yun smiled and continued to play with Sui Feng's feet, treating her while saying. So that's it. Before those high-ranking guys show up, I have no interest in continuing to fight with the soul-slashing sword. The words fell. Ye Yun winked at Ise Nanao. You have your so-called divine weapon anyway, so it doesn't matter if the soul-severing sword is gone, right? Ise Nanao was so anxious that she almost cried. She did have the sacred eight-mirror sword, a weapon passed down from generation to generation in the Ise family, but the problem was that her spiritual power was too weak to use it. Time just passes by like this. It soon became late at night. The Shinigami in the office had already dispersed, and Ye Yun and others also left the 9th Division and came to the secret base of Siritii. If it was the alien space where the divine transformation ceremony was performed before. Inu Orium drifted off to sleep in the blue hammock formed by Bakud 37, hanging stars. She treated many people today. This causes the body to become extremely tired. On the other hammock, Sui Feng leaned on it, his face flushed. He looked at Ye Yun who was constantly rubbing his feet and said with gritted teeth. Ye Yun, it's been hours, and you haven't recovered yet. The little feet were ravaged by Ye Yun's big hands. She felt her whole body go soft and numb, and she didn't even want to move a little finger. Ye Yun said excitedly, wait a little longer, it will be cured soon. Your feet and legs are soft and feel good. This is something I didn't expect. It feels so comfortable to massage them. Sui Feng thought it was normal at first, but the more he listened, the more he felt something was wrong. He then blushed and kicked Ye Yun. Damn kid, are you really treating me? When she moved, she found that her legs didn't hurt at all, so she became even more angry and directly hung on Ye Yun and started fighting with him. Ye Yun dodged while complaining. It was already healed 3 hours ago, and you're still enjoying it. Sui Feng's face turned even redder, like a big apple. In anger and humiliation, he bit Ye Seng's shoulder hard. Smelly brat! Soon, it was late at night. Ye Yun was finally kicked away by Sui Feng with a red face, and came to the hot spring yawning. Bakud number 37, Hanging Star. As the spiritual power surged, another blue hammock appeared. After tidying it up a bit, Ye Yun walked towards the hot spring with satisfaction to take a bath before going to bed. Just stepped in. Ye Yun gasped in shock at the cold. It's so cold. He thought the steam coming out of the hot spring was hot air. The result is cold. At this time, a small head emerged from the ice spring. It was Sodi no Shirayuki. She looked at Ye Yun with dissatisfaction and said in a cold voice. Are you finally not playing with Sui Feng anymore? Ye Yun felt a little guilty, so she quickly swam over and hugged Sodi no Shirayuki, smiling. Are you jealous? Sodi no Shirayuki snorted and turned his head to the side. Why should I be jealous? I'm just a soul-severing sword, just a tool. It's normal that you don't care about me. This vinegar is so sour, Ye Yun secretly complained, stroking Sodi no Shirayuki's snow-like long hair, and said with a smile. How could I treat you as a tool, Bai Shuet? In my heart, you are unique. What about my master? Sodi no Shirayuki Ye Yun. Well, it's also unique. Hearing Ye Yun's answer, Sodi no Shirayuki kissed Ye Yun angrily, and the cold air burst out of his mouth, almost freezing Ye Yun. What a chilling kiss! Yayun shivered all over from the kiss, and felt like the hairs on her body were frozen solid. But he still hugged Sodi no Shirayuki, pinched her little nose, and said with a smile. Don't be angry, I can't have forgotten yours. When I came here to make a hammock, wasn't I the first one I made for you? Sodi no Shirayuki was finally satisfied and whispered in Yayun's arms. That's more like it. If you hadn't driven away that damned demon sword Muramasa today, I might have died at his hands. She could see it. Although the demon sword Muramasa said that he wanted to release the soul-slaying sword. But in fact, he didn't consider the soul-slaying sword as a companion at all. Instead, they are treated as tools. A disposable tool used to save the Kukaki Hibiki River. However, those materialized soul-slaying swords were bewitched by the power of the demon sword Muramasa and did not notice this guy's attitude. What are you talking about? Yayun tapped Sodi no Shirayuki's forehead and said with a smile. You are my girlfriend, the softest part of my heart. Isn't it natural for me to protect you? Sodi no Shirayuki blushed slightly, but was very happy in her heart. She put her arms around Yayun's neck and said. What if my master, Rukia Kukaki, attacks me and wants to kill me to regain his Bankai? Yayun also kissed him and said with a smile. Then I'll tie her up and spank her. Sodi no Shirayuki is so cute and gentle, how could she have the heart to lay a hand on you? Sodi no Shirayuki closed his eyes shyly, stopped talking, and let Yayun press on him. Blood and ice are intertwined. The gentle sound echoed in the hot spring. Behind a large mountain behind the hot spring, Rukia Kukaki secretly peeked into the hot spring, her face flushed as she looked at the two of them. Damn little devil, you're bullying my soul-severing sword again. It's obviously the man she likes. It was clearly his own soul-slaying sword. He actually did this behind her back. Although the soul-severing sword is a part of me, this is too much. I have never done such a thing with Yayun. While muttering, Rukia Kukaki suddenly realized something, quickly hid her Ryutsu, and hid in a corner. A few seconds later, Sui Feng walked over with a blushing face. Hiding in Rukia Kukaki's original position, shyly looking at the spring scene in front. A few seconds later, Sui Feng seemed to have noticed something and turned to look to the side, and happened to meet Rukia Kukaki's shy gaze. Chapter 116. Jingling Court, early morning. Yayun held the cool Sodi no Shirayuki in his arms and stretched comfortably. Good morning, Snow White. He greeted the icy beauty in his arms. Sodi no Shirayuki blushed as she looked at Yayun and whispered. Good morning, Yayun-jun. They washed up together and took a dip in the hot spring. Yayun held Sodi no Shirayuki in his arms and said contentedly. This is the correct way to open a hot spring. Soaking in a hot spring, holding a beautiful woman in your arms, feeling her skin as cold as snow, is nothing short of bliss on earth. Thinking about this, Yayun leaned close to Sodi no Shirayuki's ear and whispered softly to her. Sodi no Shirayuki, can you dive in? First this way, then that way? Such a hot spring must be very comfortable. Sodi no Shirayuki's face turned redder than Sakura's peach, and she shyly grabbed Yayun's arm. Back. Yayun hugged Sodi no Shirayuki, kissed her icy and delicate face several times, and said with a smile. Sodi no Shirayuki Sodi no Shirayuki Sod no Shirayuki Sodi no Shirayuki Sodi no Shirayuki. Sodi no Shirayuki blushed and glanced at Yayun, but in the end she couldn't resist his nagging and nodded shyly. The icy beauty bent her legs and sank her little head into the hot spring water. An hour later, Yayun held Sodi no Shirayuki's hand and returned to the shore. She put on her clothes and walked happily towards Rukia Kukaki. When seeing Rukia Kukaki and Sui Feng, Yayun couldn't help but laugh. Rukia, Sui Feng, are you cosplaying as giant pandas? Why do you all have dark circles under your eyes? Ha ha ha. The two women's eyes were slightly dark, and they looked at Yayun with unfriendly eyes. Who are they in such a mess because of? But the two women looked at each other, blushed and didn't dare to speak. It's so embarrassing to be caught peeping. Fortunately, the people who were discovered were also there to peep, and they were all birds of the same feather. Otherwise, they really couldn't guarantee that they would kill to silence them. Seeing the two girls acting like good girls, Yayun said suspiciously. I always feel something is wrong. Why are you all so honest today? Did you do anything wrong? Tell me the truth. The two girls blushed and gnashed their teeth, but in the end they couldn't help themselves and rushed towards Yayun screaming, hitting Yayun with their pink fists continuously. Go to hell, you pervert! Stinky brat, be prepared! A moment later, Yayun happily bid farewell to the alien space. Next to him, Sui Feng looked at Yayun unhappily and said, Yayun, where are you going? Didn't you say you didn't want to clash with the soul-slaying sword? Yayun stretched and said happily, so I just want to absorb some spiritual energy. Before, he had to absorb spiritual energy secretly, for fear of being discovered by the Shinigami of each team and attracting the captains of each team. But now, the entire Jingling Court is a manifestation of the soul-slaying sword. Even if I suck all the land here clean, the Shinigami from other teams will not fight me to the death. It's true that heroes emerge in troubled times. A man can't become rich without unexpected fortune, and a horse can't grow fat without late-night grass. Ha 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 ha. This incident is my Lord Yayun's path to heaven. Looking at the energetic Yayun, Sui Feng couldn't help but roll his eyes. You're really good at taking advantage of the situation to rob people. Aren't you afraid that the master will come after you and kill you? Yayun laughed triumphantly, pointed to the depths of the Siridii outside the various divisions, and said, so when we go to rob the nobles' houses this time, old man Yamamoto won't be able to say anything. Sui Feng suddenly realized and immediately showed an excited expression. Are you planning to raid the Tsunoya Shiro family's house? Yayun smiled but said nothing. Sui Feng blinked and said tentatively. Are you still targeting the ISE family? Seeing that Yayun still didn't speak, Sui Feng was surprised. You won't even let the Kokaki family go, will you? After a few seconds, Sui Feng swallowed slightly and said nervously. You still want to attack the Shihaoran family? She quickly said, you little brat, don't try to take over Shihaoran's family. It's our Feng family's responsibility to protect Shihaoran. Yayun rubbed Sui Feng's hair vigorously, complaining about her blind loyalty. But Sui Feng, don't you think those nobles are hateful? They acted arrogantly on a daily basis, but when they encountered danger, they all ran away, leaving you here alone to fight bloody battles. But that won't work either. Sui Feng tried hard to grab Yayun's arm, wanting him to change his crazy idea. No, I can't stand it. Yayun dragged Sui Feng step by step towards the noble's residence. Attention! The first one is the Kokaki family. Looking at the luxurious, solemn house that gave people an invisible sense of restraint, Yayun couldn't help licking his lips. The moment you put your hand on it, the wooden house turned into blue spiritual energy and flowed into Yayun's body like water. When the house disappears, Yayun still looked at the ground unsatisfied, and said with shining eyes. These good-for-nothing, greedy nobles, even the foundation is made of bricks and stones condensed from spiritual energy. They must be severely criticized. He touched the ground with his hands. The foundation stones just disappeared. Sui Feng's scalp was numb, and he grabbed Yayun's arm tightly and said, you didn't even let go of the foundation. Captain Kokaki will come back and kill you. She could already imagine how angry Byakuya Kokaki would be when he returned home and saw that not even a brick was left of his family. Maybe he will just go crazy and fight Yayun to the death. Of course, when she saw the scene before her, she also thought of what happened to the Shihaoran family. I'm afraid they are not much stronger than the Kokaki family. Yayun waved his hand and said righteously, Byakuya Kokaki has betrayed the Siridii. I am only using legal means to confiscate his family property. Sui Feng said with a dark face, didn't you insist yesterday that Byakuya Kukaki had not betrayed you? This kind of thing can be flexibly adapted. Yayun smiled and continued to walk towards other houses and walls to devour and absorb. Godi 13 had been reduced to ruins during the war, with debris and rubble strewn all over the ground, making it extremely inconvenient to absorb spiritual energy. But these nobles are different. They fled from the war as soon as possible and no one knew where they had fled to in Rukanga. As a result, the buildings here are intact. It is very easy to absorb. Sui Feng watched helplessly as the Kukaki family's houses disappeared one after another. The walls on the streets also disappeared one by one. In the end, Yayun even went so far as to absorb the floor tiles to ensure that not a single brick would be left in the Kukaki family. Sui Feng's expression has changed from anxiety at the beginning to numbness now. She watched helplessly as Yayun encroached from the west to the east, carving out a barrier among the contiguous Kukaki family buildings. This is all thanks to the generosity of the Kukaki family. A large family and a great business. Otherwise, Yayun would be able to devour it all in half a day. Time passes. From day to night. The bright moon hung in the sky like a jade plate, casting its white moonlight and dispelling the darkness of Jingling Court. After a day of absorbing spiritual energy, Yayun looked at the empty space under the moonlight and said with pride. Sui Feng, this is my world, the world I have conquered for you. Sui Feng kicked Yayun speechlessly. What are you doing? I don't want this bumpy place. It was almost the same when it wasn't absorbed. She felt that Yayun was really wasting a talent. So many exquisite and luxurious buildings were absorbed by him as spiritual power. Yayun was kicked but didn't care. With his current level of spiritual power, Sui Feng's kick was just a tickle to him. Looking at the empty space, Yayun was still extremely happy. He simply hugged Sui Feng and spun him around a few times. Sui Feng, fly up. I will build you a big house in the future. Will you be happy? Ha 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 ha. Sui Feng's face flushed with embarrassment, and he quickly punched Yayun with his fist, saying, Don't be crazy, you little brat. Put me down quickly. I'm the captain. It will be embarrassing if someone sees us. She is the commander-in-chief of the secret and mobile forces, and almost commands the largest army of Jingling Court. He has always treated people with coldness and ruthlessness. If her subordinate Xing Jun saw this scene, she would probably lose her position as captain. She would be too embarrassed to death. Only then did Yayun reluctantly put Sui Feng down. The other side. Somewhere in a hidden corner of Jingling Ting. Yao Daokan looked at his injuries angrily and said with gritted teeth. Why can't it be restored? What's with that human soul-severing sword? Why is its ability so strange? Since last night, he has used a large number of healing soul-severing swords to heal himself. It cannot be said that there is no effect. I can only say that it is better than nothing. After struggling for a whole day and night, he only recovered from the wound the size of his fingernail. Suzumashi said solemnly, It seems that the little devil's soul-severing sword has the ability to make people unable to be cured. We need to think of other ways. The demon sword Muramis's face was gloomy. He tried every possible solution he could think of. But the recovery is still so slow. If the Shinigami were given time, with their abilities, they might actually be able to develop a calendar for the Soul Zan sword. Asterisk. Think of this. The demon sword Muramasa thought of Kuratsuka Mayuri, and a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. That crazy scientist. Without knowing the consequences of Bankai's death, the other party killed Golden Hiji Kasitagarba without hesitation. When he tried to persuade Jinsipi to kill Dazang again, he discovered that the other party was afraid of Nai Li. He refuses to betray Kuratsuka Mayuri no matter what. If every soul-slaying sword is as fearful as the golden-haired Jizo, then the soul-slaying swords bewitched by him will completely betray him. By then, Yayadao Muramasa gritted his teeth and thought of the proposal Izensuk had given him before. A soul-slaying sword is like its master. Izensuk is definitely a conspirator with ulterior motives. But he has no choice now. I could only grit my teeth and say, Byakuya Kokaki, open the cage that holds the hollows. I want to devour those Minos Grande. Across from him, Byakuya Kokaki, wearing a white captain's haori and looking indifferent, nodded calmly and said, I see. Huat-Yun frowned and said, devouring the power of the void, isn't that disgusting? Although Zanhunto is not a Shinigami, they have the same attitude towards hollows, and both believe that they are the embodiment of evil. Muramasa looked over and said in a deep voice, then can you use your Bankai, Kaiten Kaikotsu, to heal me? He remembered that Kaiten Kaikotsu had used some ability to transfer all the injuries to Yayun. Kuang-gu shook his head and said calmly, whether your injury was caused by me, my Bankai posture can't do anything about it. The demon sword Muramasa's expression turned cold, then don't try to stop me. Don't forget that everything I did was to completely liberate the soul-slaying sword. Speaking of this, a trace of resentment flashed through his heart. If Minajiki hadn't disobeyed his orders, he wouldn't have devoured the hollow's power. With Bankai's heaven-defying ability, not to mention that he only broke an arm and a leg, even if he was half-crippled, he could be healed. Pity. Minajiki's desire to fight was too strong, and she completely ignored his temptation. Currently still in a fierce battle with Anohanaretsu, Byakuya Kokaki silently drew out his Soulzan knife, and the blade lightly slashed through the air, thus severing the invisible space. The cracks that opened up were colorful, and a roar that shook the earth emerged. The evil Ryotsu pounced on him. Many of the soul-severing swords present frowned. Suddenly feeling so much Ryotsu from Minos Grande made them want to chop people. Byakuya Kokaki said calmly, there are a total of 177 Minos Grande imprisoned here, all Jillian level. They were captured by the Shinigami during their expeditions and used as training for the graduating students. Just as Byakuya Kokaki was explaining, Jillian, wearing a pale white mask and looking like a black mountain, poked his head out. Roaring and roaring. There is no rationality in his eyes. He frantically pushed his dark body out. Seeing this, Suzumushi said coldly, Mr. Muramasa, do you really want to trust this guy? Don't forget, he's a Shinigami. The dozens of soul slashers present also looked at Byakuya Kokaki with distrust. They were originally bewitched by the demon sword Muramasa and extremely hated the existence of Shinigami. He believed that the other party was oppressing and bullying the soul-slaying sword. Unfortunately, Byakuya Kokaki's experience in joining the gang was extremely strange. This guy actually took the initiative to recommend himself and wanted to become their companion. This made Zanhunto distrust Byakuya Kokaki even more. But the demon sword Muramasa smiled and said, it doesn't matter. Mr. Byakuya Kokaki can be trusted. I can guarantee that. Then, he gently said to Byakuya Kokaki, I am Kokaki Hibiki's soul-slaying sword. I held you in my arms when you were little. Back then, you didn't care and called me Uncle Muramasa. As long as you help me rescue the master, the Kokaki family will be the only noble family in Soul Society. By then, the entire Soul Society will surrender to the Kokaki family, and you will become the most honored person in Soul Society. Byakuya Kokaki nodded slightly and said calmly, I also want to see Uncle Kokaki Hibiki. I opposed Grandpa's actions at the beginning, but unfortunately, there is still no way to save Uncle Hibiki from being trapped. The demon sword Muramasa nodded gently, and was then supported and walked towards Minos Grande. In an instant, Minos Grande's figure seemed to turn into a black stream of water, and was madly devoured by the demon sword Muramasa. He also let out a scream of pain at this moment. Ah! Chapter 117. The shrill screams made one's scalp tingle. The huge black Jillian, like a mountain, actually poured into the body of the demon sword Muramasa like a stream of water. One after another, dozens of Minos Grandae were devoured in a blink of an eye, and the body of the demon sword Muramasa was twisted and deformed. The body is convex and concave. It was as if something was rushing out. The soul-slaying swords at the scene revealed expressions of disgust and fear, because the mere thought of devouring the void made them feel nauseous. Not to mention the possibility of a mind being contaminated by emptiness. Huatian couldn't help but ask, even if Muramasa's ability can devour Minos Grandae, will consuming so many hollows really not corrupt his soul? Void is the product of the depravity of the human soul, and possesses all the bad qualities of human beings, such as pride, jealousy, rage, laziness, greed, gluttony, lust, despair, hatred, disgust, pain. It can be said to be the gathering place of darkness and original sin in the world. The demon sword Muramasa used his power to influence the mind to devour these Minos Grandae, which was equivalent to bearing the malice of these Minos Grandae at the same time. But he couldn't digest so many Minos Grandae. Minos Grandae will exist in his body at all times, constantly affecting his sanity until he completely degenerates into Minos Grandae. Hiranmaru said coldly, "It depends on whether his mind can bear it. If he can't bear it, we can only kill him." The soul-slaying sword at the scene did not object. If the soul is devoured by Minos Grandae, it means that the demon sword Muramasa is dead. And they couldn't possibly surrender to a Minos Grandae. Hearing the conversation between the soul-slaying swordsmen, Byakuya glanced at them imperceptibly, and his heavy heart finally relaxed a little. Fine. At least there is self-awareness. No, Urjuki was not completely bewitched by the demon sword Muramasa. Otherwise, even if the captain came, it might not be easy to take down the dozen or so completely bewitched Bankai soul-slaying swords. Time passes by every second. One after another, the pitch-black Jillians were forcibly devoured by the demon sword Muramasa amidst shrill roars, and became part of him. Finally, Jillian no longer emerged from the cracks. All the soul-slaying sword manifestations, including Byakuya, looked solemnly at the mass of flesh before them. That's right. It's a meatball. An irregular white sphere. Jillian's faces kept appearing on its surface, ferocious and terrifying, and constantly making earth-shaking and piercing roars. It seemed as if these Minos Grandae were unwilling to be eaten and wanted to wreak havoc and destroy. This situation continued for several minutes. Until the white flesh ball gradually shrank, revealing the figure of the demon sword Muramasa, the white flesh ball disappeared into his body. The demon sword Muramasa coughed weakly twice, looked at the surrounding soul-slaying swords and Byakuya, and said, "Everyone, it's me." Hearing the words of the demon sword Muramasa, the soul-slaying swords present breathed a sigh of relief and felt at ease. This familiar Ryotsuoan sound. It is indeed the demon sword Muramasa himself. Byakuya felt a little regretful. If the demon sword Muramasa had his soul devoured by Minos Grandae, the crisis of soul society would be resolved. Pity. The other person's mind is too determined. When thinking about this, Byakuya was a little surprised. Is my uncle really worth it? In his memory, Kukuki Hibiki was clearly an extremely willful Shinigami, even a little too arrogant and presumptuous. He is even more cruel to his companions. He has absolutely no faith in the power of his companions and only believes in the ability of his own soul-slaying sword. It is hard to imagine that the soul-slaying sword of such a person could withstand the erosion of Minos Grandae in order to save him, leaving his inner world unaffected. The two have completely different personalities. Just as Byakuya was thinking. The demon sword Muramasa took a look at his broken arms and legs. A thought came to my mind. Next second, a pale white substance was wriggling and spreading in the wound. A brand new arm was formed in just a few seconds. Byakuya's pupil shrank, and he immediately came back to his senses, looking solemnly at the demon sword Muramasa's recovered arm. Super speed self-healing. Same as Ye Yun's super speed self-healing ability. These are heaven-defying abilities only possessed by the higher-ranking Minos Grande. Its ability itself is not so much self-healing as it is creating parts, completely circumventing the characteristic of injuries that cannot be recovered. Among the more than 100 Jillians he absorbed, there should be one with super-fast self-healing ability. Mr. Muramasa, are you okay? Suzumushi looked at the demon sword Muramasa. The demon sword Muramasa clenched his newly formed arm, smiled, and said, I feel great now. The fusion of the power of the void has not only completely recovered my injuries, but also made me even stronger. Although absorbing more than 100 Jillians made his inner world extremely noisy, it also gave him many new abilities. For example, Minos Grand Zero, Ring Spin, Super Speed Healing, Search Circuit. If he gets hit by Yayun Zero again, he felt that his hands and feet would never be blown off. At most, he would be seriously injured, and he would be able to recover quickly. Master, I will rescue you right away. Muramasa's eyes flashed with excitement, and he clenched his fists. He turned to look at the many soul-severing swords, and said in a deep voice. Everyone, I have sealed Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni, but the remaining Shinigami are still struggling in vain. We must wipe them out. Only in this way can we completely free our soul-slaying blades. Hundreds of soul-severing knives cheered and looked at the demon sword Muramasa with great excitement. Their strength is not comparable to those Bankai soul-slaying swords. He was the most brainwashed by the demon sword Muramasa. They completely regard Shinigami as their mortal enemies, and believe that only by eradicating all Shinigami can they completely free their soul-slaying swords. A gleam of light flashed in Byakuya Kukaki's eyes. The reason why he betrayed Shinigami and joined the Soul Zanto team was to find out the whereabouts of the captain. Don't be fooled by the fact that the soul-slaying swords are jumping around happily now. But as long as the captain shows up, these soul-severing swords will be dealt with in no time. Next, we need to find out where the captain is sealed. Byakuya Kukaki thought secretly in his heart. Late at night. Inside the secret base's alien space. Yayun and Sodi no Shirayuki were lying on a hammock. He looked at Sodi no Shirayuki with some doubt and said. Shirayuki, what did Rukia want you to do today? Why did she ask me to leave? Could it be that she wants you to return to the soul-slashing sword? Sui Feng shouldn't have been the one accompanying him today. Instead it should be Sodi no Shirayuki. But helpless, Rukia Kukaki called Sodi no Shirayuki with a red face, saying that there was something important and wanted to talk to her. Hearing Yayun raise this question, Sodi no Shirayuki suddenly became a little proud. Well, it's a secret. She pursed her lips and forced a smile. Hearing her say this, Yayun became even more curious, so he shook Sodi no Shirayuki and said in her ear with a smile. Snow White, just tell me, good Snow White is the cutest, Snow White is the most beautiful woman in the world, the most gentle in the world. Sodi no Shirayuki's face flushed with praise. But she had experienced being bullied in the morning, so this time she didn't answer no matter how Yayun asked. Instead, she shyly grabbed Yayun's hand and placed it on her body, letting Yayun press her down, and whispered. Yayun, love me. Seeing Sodi no Shirayuki's shy look, Yayun couldn't hold back any longer. He was immediately whipped. He said viciously. I want you to beg me to tell you later. Sodi no Shirayuki flushed and closed her eyes, wrapping her arms around Yayun's neck. The other side. Rukia Kukaki, who was lying in the hammock, tossing and turning and unable to sleep, suddenly screamed and looked into the distance with a red face. 3. Her face flushed. She uttered the name Sodi no Shirayuki in shame and anger. Even though I begged her so much in the morning, she still bullied me at night. After hesitating for 2 seconds, Rukia Kukaki couldn't help it, quietly got off the hammock, and came to the same place as yesterday to watch secretly. Sui Feng also came over with Rukia Kukaki. The first time is unfamiliar, the second time is familiar. Although the two girls were still a little embarrassed when they met, they tacitly did not ask any questions, and looked at Luo and Haitang with blushing faces. Early the next morning, Yayun tilted his head, looking questioningly at the two women with darker eye circles. Do you really want to cosplay as giant pandas? The two women looked at him with dark faces and swung their fists at him without hesitation. Sui Feng was not even satisfied and drew out his soul-slaying sword. The blade slashed Ye Yun's body. There was a clang 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 sound and even sparks flew. Sodi no Shirayuki couldn't help but laugh, and secretly gave Rukia Kukaki a smug look. Master of trash! Rukia Kukaki was so angry that her face turned red and she bit Ye Yun's shoulder hard. Stinky Ye Yun! Early morning of the third day. Yayun looked at the two women who had dark circles under their eyes and walked in a daze, and said strangely. Sui Feng, did you attack Rukia at night because you couldn't get the love you wanted from Yuaki? Otherwise, why did you stay up all night? Sui Feng looked at Yayun fiercely. My love for Yuaki-sama is known to all heaven and earth. Day 4. When the first rays of sunlight shone down in the morning, Yayun got up and was a little surprised when he saw the two women again. He couldn't help but say. Are you guys planning to stop being Shinigami and start cultivating immortality instead? Both women had dark circles under their eyes, almost like they were wearing smoky makeup. From Shinigami captain to rebellious little girl. There is a kind of beauty that may lead to sudden death at any time. The two women didn't even want to say anything and looked at Yayun as if he were a monster. Sui Feng, monster. Rukia Kukaki, big monster. They peeped there for 4 days, and every night Yayun bullied Sodi no Shirayuki like a human beast. Every time he bullies the other party to the point that he begs for mercy. They all looked a little scared, wondering how such a petite Sodi no Shirayuki could bear it. Every time I don't want to watch. I always feel like there is a cat scratching my heart. Sodi no Shirayuki, come with me. Rukia Kukaki called out to Sodi no Shirayuki with a blushing face, and took the other's icy little hand and walked away. Sui Feng yawned and prepared to catch up on some sleep during the day. Anyway, those soul-severing swords haven't appeared recently, and no one knows what plans they are working on, which just happened to allow them to regain a lot of lost territory. At this time, Yayun, he muttered to himself. The Kukaki family, the Ise family, and the Tsunoya Shiro family have almost been eaten up, and now it's the Shihaoran family's turn. Sui Feng's beautiful eyes widened suddenly and said. No. Yayun looked over in surprise. You sat up in shock from your dying illness. Sui Feng didn't care and quickly went up to hug Yayun. I am a member of the Feng family. I have protected the Shihaoran family for generations. I will never let you go over and destroy our family. Yayun blinked. 10 minutes later. Sui Feng looked at the approaching Shihaoran family with grief and anger, bit Yayun's arm fiercely, and muttered. No, you are absolutely not allowed to go over and demolish the house. It's a house for an adult. Yayun raised his right arm and lifted up the petite Sui Feng. He waved it twice and said with a happy smile. Clang 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 clang. Sui Feng brand human-shaped pendant. Sui Feng was almost pd off, but he sadly discovered that his current strength was no match for this brat. Both Ryotsuo and strength. Yayun is far stronger than her. So, Sui Feng could only look at Yayun angrily as the houses turned into blue spiritual energy and were absorbed and devoured. Just then, Yayun suddenly stopped and looked towards the position of the first team in surprise. BB. In the sky over there, an astonishing spiritual power burst out, and a long golden pillar fell from the sky. There was a loud bang. The golden pillar slammed heavily to the ground. B at GBW. The sound of its landing was so deafening that it could even be heard from a distance away from the first team. It feels a bit like my Ruyi Jinggu Bang. Yayun looked at the long golden pillar with interest. Sui Feng was surprised and stopped playing with Yayun. He got off Yayun and looked solemnly in the direction of the first team. Tianzu Chariot, have the Zero Squad arrived yet? She really didn't expect that things would get to this point, which would naturally attract the Shinigami who were looking for her. You know, even 100 years ago, there was an incident that led to the hollowing of 4 captains. The incident of Izensuk's defection a few months ago. None of them alerted the Zero Squad of the Akoko clan. Now that the Zero Squad has arrived, do they believe that the soul-slaying sword rebellion within the Siraidii has already threatened the safety of the Soul King Palace? Heavenly Pillar Chariot. Yayun raised his eyebrows slightly. Sui Feng gave Yayun a simple explanation with a serious expression. That's the Zero Squad's vehicle for traveling from the Soul King Palace to the Siraidii. It possesses terrifying hardness and can travel through space. The Zero Squad you mentioned. It's the Secret Service you mentioned. Each one has combat power beyond the captains. I just don't know which one is coming. Sui Feng couldn't help but swallow his saliva. She is the commander-in-chief of the covered mobile team, so she naturally knows the Shinigami of Squad Zero. It can be said that every one of them is a monster. It is said that there are Shinigami who are stronger than Yamamoto Genri Usai Shigakuni. It is hard to imagine how terrifying they are. Chapter 118. Team Zero, they actually came. Yayun was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the Spirit King Palace would actually be alarmed. You know, when facing Izensuk, many captains of the Siraidii had their heads beaten into dog heads. Not a single member of Squad Zero showed up. Now it's just a simple soul-slaying sword rebellion, but they actually sent people from Squad Zero in person. DDJ. Yayun's lips curled up in mockery. I told you, these high-ranking guys will definitely not be able to sit still when they encounter danger. In the original novel, the reason why these arrogant guys did not show up was simply because Old Man Yamamoto was too conscientious. Having the title of the strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years also means that he has guarded the Siraidii for 1,000 years and cultivated many parasites. For example, the high and mighty Zero Squad. For example, those extremely arrogant nobles. Now that Old Man Yamamoto has been sealed, every one of these guys can't sit still. Sui Feng couldn't help but glare at Yayun. The arrival of Team Zero means things are pressing. How can you still laugh at this moment? What's so funny about that? Yayun curled his lips in disdain and said, in my opinion, the situation is not too critical. Otherwise, why don't those nobles show up? Squad Zero is a combat unit after all. But those nobles are real parasites. Even if a Byakuya Kokaki, Shihour Yuruaki, or Ise Nanao appears occasionally, it does not prevent them from being overall unsightly. Sui Feng glanced at Yayun angrily. I don't understand why he has no sense of superiority or inferiority. Squad Zero is a special agency that protects the Soul King. Godai 13 is a combat unit that protects the nobles. The former is stationed at the palace of the Spirit King. The latter is stationed in Jingling Court. It can be said that both Squad Zero and Godai 13 are organizations created to protect the nobility. And that BD Yayun. It's as if they were born without any sense of superiority or inferiority. He actually shouted for the nobles to fight. As soon as Sui Feng expressed his thoughts, he saw Yayun's incredible expression. You're too pedantic, aren't you? Why do you want to protect 19 nobles? What do those nobles have to protect? The world won't be affected by them whether they exist or not. Yayun really couldn't understand what these people were thinking. Isn't the slave mentality a bit too strong? In a world where individual force trumps organization, there is still such a clear class division. Shouldn't it be the law of the jungle, with the strong being respected? According to Sui Feng, she would not only protect those nobles, but would even sacrifice her life for it, and be proud of it. The slave mentality was dozens of times deeper than he had imagined. Sui Feng stamped his feet in anger. there's no point in trying to reason with a brat like you. I have to go see which adult is coming. The words fell. Sui Feng's figure flashed and headed towards the first squadron. Ye Yun thought about it, but still didn't go over. Instead, he continued to stay and gnaw on the Shaoran family, muttering. It's really uncomfortable. I'm willing to protect Jinglingting, but I didn't expect that Jinglingting is just a protection organization and the official. First Squadron, in the ruins. The golden cylindrical Tianzi chariot fell to the ground, crushing a large amount of building stones into pieces. The commotion caused attracted a large number of Shinigami. Kurako Shunsui Seijin Jaishur Yukatake hit Shugaya Chwir Madarame Ikeku Matsumoto Rangiku. Yeah, it's really coming. Kurako Shunsui looked at the Tianzi chariot in front of him and held down his hat helplessly. You can tell without even thinking about it. If Mr. Yamamoto knew, I will definitely give him a good beating. Jaishur Yukatake was a little surprised and said, Kiraku, you seem to know who's coming from Squad 0. The other Shinigami also looked at Kurako Shunsui. Kurako Shunsui said helplessly, it's all because of that brat Ye Yun. He's unwilling to help, so I can only keep contacting Squad 0. So they're coming. Jaishur Yukatake was even more surprised. Don't be fooled by the fact that Team 0 sounds very similar to Godi 13. But in fact, the two are two completely different organizations. The former guards the palace of the Spirit King. The latter guards the Jingling Court. Under normal circumstances, even if the Jinglingting was destroyed, the Zero Squad might not take action. How is that possible? Kurako Shunsui quickly shook his head. You don't know the personalities of those guys, how could they come here so easily? As early as when Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni disappeared and the T-13th Squadron was severely damaged. He has already contacted Squad 0. But the other party did not give any response. Until this time, he was forced to describe the soul-slaying sword rebellion in an extremely serious manner. This forced the Zero Squad's Tianzi chariot to come for support. What a grand show, Team 0! Madarame Ikeku's eyes were burning, and he couldn't help but hold down his soul-slaying sword and said, I don't know how strong it is. Captains Kurako Shunsui, Jaishur Yukatake, etc. were immediately startled and quickly said, Madarame Ikeku, don't mess around with me. Even though you have mastered Bankai, you can't beat a single member of Squad 0. After the Zanhunto rebellion, they already knew that Madarame Ikeku was hiding his strength. But even if you learn Bankai, there is no way he could be a match for the members of Squad 0. At this time, Sui Feng's figure galloped over from a distance, stopped in front of the crowd, and looked solemnly at the golden Tianzi chariot. Captain Kiraku, who's here? Kurako Shunsui shook his head. I don't know, but it's probably just 3 of those people. The Tianzi chariot has a unique coating that isolates spiritual energy. Even though all the people present were captains, they were unable to observe what was happening inside. However, there are only a few members of Team 0, and there has been no increase in hundreds of years, so only those few can come. Jaishur Yukatake coughed twice and said weakly, I hope the one who comes is the 3rd official, Western Divine General, Wang Yu of Ermiwu. He should be able to deal with the rebellion of the soul-severing sword. Sui Feng frowned. I know this guy, but the intelligence says he's a very willful Shinigami. Kurako Shunsui said helplessly, after all, this is an organization that protects the Soul King. It's inevitable that they're arrogant. It's already great that they've come. Kashiwamura Seijin asked, are the Shinigami of Squad 0 really that strong? He has only been captain for over 100 years and doesn't have a particularly good understanding of many things. Hitsugaichware also looked over. He was even younger than Seijin Kashiwamura when he became the captain. Kurako Shunsui thought for a moment and explained to them, to become a Shinigami of Team 0, one's strength must be close to that of the old man. Therefore, in the past 1,000 years, someone named Song joined Team 0. Kashiwamura Sajan and Hitsuga Ichware both took a deep breath. It's just such a simple sentence. They knew how terrifying Squad Zero was. Being close to Captain Yamamoto, wouldn't that mean he is the strongest Shinigami in the second millennium? While everyone was talking, from far away, there was a loud rumbling sound, and a huge ruin was blown open, revealing the figure of Zaraki Kenpeki holding a blade. He looked at everyone present, laughed, and said, "Yachiru, I said it's okay. Just chop along the direction Ryotsu came from and you'll definitely find the enemy." Behind him, Baekhyun Liu grumbled in frustration. "Xiao Jian has been led astray by Xiao Yun. He used to walk with me. Ever since meeting Ye Yun, Zaraki Kenpeki seemed to have an epiphany. If he couldn't find a way out, he would just cut one out himself. This made her, the little expert in giving directions, useless." Zaraki Kenpeki said with a frown, "I followed you just now, but didn't you lead me to 7 dead ends?" Kuzujishi Yachiru pouted and pulled Zaraki Kenpeki's hair hard. Zaraki Kenpeki said this while looking at the Tianzu chariot enthusiastically. "Hey, Kurako Shunsui, what the hell is this thing? Was that the amazing Ryotsu just now released from this thing?" Kurako Shunsui was so confused when he saw him. He had known that Zaraki Kenpeki would definitely get lost, so he deliberately did not inform him. Who would have thought that this guy would actually chop all the way here? Madarame Ikeko became excited and started talking to Zaraki Kenpeki in a chatterbox, which immediately made the latter's eyes become fanatical. "Zero Squad? I wonder if I can enjoy the thrill of fighting." Kurako Shunsui quickly said, "Kenpeki, please don't do anything rash. The Shinigami of Squad Zero don't have good tempers." Before he could finish his words, a gap suddenly appeared on the cylindrical Tianzu chariot, and with the sound of footsteps, an elegant woman in gorgeous clothes walked out. The woman had medium-length black hair with side bangs, and wore intricate golden hair accessories and a white shawl with buckles. She has a pretty face and pale complexion. She wore light makeup and a white robe with a purple lining. Looks extraordinarily refined. The first impression given is not that of a Shinigami, but more like one of those high-ranking tribes. Hitsuga Ichware frowned. "This is..." Sui Feng said solemnly. "One of the members of the Royal Secret Agent Zero Division, the Northern Divine General, Shutara Senjumaru, also known as Ori no Mori." Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Shutara Senjumaru looked at Kurako Shunsui and said with a smile, "Captain Kurako, your understanding of Squad Zero is somewhat distorted. I have a very good personality and am very gentle to others." Kurako Shunsui gave a bitter laugh and said, "Senjumaru, stop teasing me at this time. You should already know the details, right?" Shutara Senjumaru nodded, looked at the ruined First Division, and chuckled. "That guy Yamamoto is really going backwards. A mere rebellion by the soul-slaying sword has driven him to this state." Kurako Shunsui couldn't help but frown. The other captains couldn't help but frown. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigakuni is, after all, the captain of the Seireitei. The woman in front of me was not polite at all. Jaishur Yukatake coughed twice and said, "Senjumaru, don't underestimate that guy. He can make our soul-severing sword symbolize betrayal." "I know." Shutara Senjumaru interrupted Kurako Shunsui, smiled softly, and said, "But even so, Captain Yamamoto is a bit too incompetent. He actually needs our Zero Squad to come over for support." "Dae." Zaraki Kenpeki laughed heartily, his eyes gazing wildly at Shutara Senjumaru, his left hand clutching the tattered Zanhunt. "So, your strength should be very strong." Shutara Senjumaru looked at Zaraki Kenpeki. Next second, Zaraki Kenpeki laughed heartily, unleashing a violent burst of golden Ryotsu, and charged towards Shutara Senjumaru like a wild beast. "Let me test your skills." Kurako Shunsui's expression changed drastically, and before he could stop himself, he saw Zaraki Kenpeki had already rushed in front of Shutara Senjumaru. The blade, covered in violent golden ryotsu, slashed down like a violent storm. 360 This moment. Shidora Senjumaru, however, had a normal expression and smiled gently. 6 golden skeleton arms stretched out from his white robe. This should be Captain Zaraki, right? I've heard of your name before. You're known as a beastly man who loves to kill. The gentle voice softly echoed in the clearing. But along with the sound, there was also the sound of metal clashing. The 6 golden skeleton arms waved dazzlingly. It's like golden flowers blooming in the sky. And every swing would inevitably collide with Zaraki Kenpaki's blade. Just a few seconds. The two nearly collided thousands of times. Zaraki Kenpaki's almost crazy sword swings were all easily blocked by the golden skeleton arm. Seeing Zaraki Kenpaki still attacking crazily, Shidora Senjumaru couldn't help but laugh. Like the gentle spring rain. Taking advantage of the gap between Zaraki Kenpaki's attacks, Shidora Senjumaru raised her red lips slightly, took a step forward, and approached Zaraki Kenpaki. Let me make you a suit of clothes. Before Zaraki Kenpaki could react, he saw 6 golden arms waving wildly. Just 1 second. Zaraki Kenpaki was wearing a white piece of clothing, similar to a straitjacket, which wrapped him tightly like a cicada pupa. As Shidora Senjumaru's golden skull arm pulled, Zaraki Kenpaki's white clothes suddenly tightened. Not only did it restrict Zaraki Kenpaki's movements, it even confined his bursts of golden ryotsu within the white robe. What? Zaraki Kenpaki's pupils dilate to ultimate. The speed and strength of this gorgeous woman in front of him were much greater than his. And the white clothes she wove were even better. Even the special eye mask made for him by the 12th Division could not completely seal his spiritual power. This white dress imprisoned all his spiritual power inside. Even with tremendous spiritual power, there was no way to break through it. The other captains were also terrified. Zaraki Kenpaki is quite powerful. But he was easily killed instantly by this girl from Squad 0. As expected of the Royal Secret Service. Kurako Shunsui exclaimed in admiration and walked forward, saying, Senjumaru, let me tell you about the current situation of the Siraidai. No need, take me to find the demon sword Muramasa. Shidora Senjumaru said calmly, I cannot stay in Jingling Court for long this time. I must resolve this issue as soon as possible.